Thanks everyone for joining us today. Welcome to our webinar. Today we're going to be talking about renewable energy, specifically options for businesses, but a little bit about the market and I guess what's changed over the last few years in Australia as well. Today, if I can get to the next slide. There we go. Today I'm joined by my far more photogenic colleagues in Sarah and Byron. Sarah, do you want to give us a quick intro?
Yeah, sure. I'm Sarah Cork. I'm a member of the investments team at Flow Power. I'm a senior analyst and spend my days looking at PPAs and different, power purchase agreements and with wind and solar assets and how that translates to customers.
Perfect, thanks Sarah. And yeah, challenge to the group, no three-letter acronyms today, but we'll see how we go. Byron.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Byron Tritchard. I'm one of the client solutions managers here at Flow Power. So I look after a large patch of customers and have conversations and work out some strategies on how to reduce their energy bills and focusing also on trying to achieve their renewable energy targets and sustainability targets.
Awesome, thanks guys. My name's Jacob Marnie and General Manager here at Flow Power, specifically looking after what we call our energy solutions team, which is mainly around some of the retail products we offer. So just quickly, what we'll be talking about today, as I mentioned, we're going to do a quick update on the energy market and then focus on what it means for businesses to go renewables and how they can do that. We'll touch on the difference between carbon credits, renewable energy certificates and power purchase agreements. And we've got a couple of case studies to take us home and we'll reserve a little bit of time for questions at the end as well. So just quickly on, I guess, what's changed in the last few years and what changes we've got to come. We had a major coal-fired power plant close in 2017, which was Hazelwood. That kind of saw prices really escalate. And then following that, a lot of renewables entered the grid to kind of try and soak up some of those high prices. Since then, we've really seen prices fall over the last couple of years due to renewables genuinely being quite a bit cheaper than fossil fuels. Although the sentiment in the market is that still that they're the reason that prices are expensive, even though the complete opposite's happening at the moment. We've seen a big impact from rooftop solar. So I think today in the AFR, the Australian grid recently hit a record for minimum demand. And that's because there's so much, I guess, power plants sitting on people's roofs, sitting in people's backyards, sitting in businesses' backyards, rather. And I guess with this does come some challenges. So one of the big challenges we're facing is this reliance on firming. Sarah, do you want to kind of touch on that? It's probably more your cup of tea.
Yeah, sure. As solar rolls off and we see high prices and high demand, we need technology that can react really quickly to that scenario. Things like gas and batteries, where the ramp up time or the time in which they can generate is really quick. There's a real, I guess, need for more of that in the network.
For sure, and that's kind of when prices are more expensive as well. So what we're seeing is it's not necessarily when renewables are generating that prices are high. It's typically when your gas firming technologies come on that we see prices escalate. And that does mean that there's still volatility in the grid. That hasn't gone away. However, the base kind of prices have been a lot lower over the last couple of years. This figure on the top right, it shows the coal-fired power plants we've got closing over the next 30 years. However, there is thought that will be a lot sooner. So it's likely we're going to see some of those stations shut a bit earlier. They're just not making as much money with all the renewables in the grid at the moment. So on renewables, one of the big news items this year has been that we broke a new record for most renewables in the grid. That was just over 60%. So pretty cool that we're reaching those kind of milestones. So September 2021, it's right here on the far right, but you can see this yellow patch here is solar, the green bit's wind, blue's hydro, this non-distinct orange or nude color is gas, and then we've got black coal and brown coal. So that was the least fossil fuel generation that we had in the grid at any given time. And as we go forward, we're just going to keep breaking more and more records like this. It does have some impact for customers. If you've got solar on at your house or at your business, you're probably noticing that your feed-in tariffs are dropping. So what you get paid for the solar export. Byron, you work with a lot of our customers. I guess how are customers finding that? What's going on there?
Yeah, definitely had quite a few discussions about that, particularly over the last couple of months and recent months. So a lot of the conversations centering around solar that was installed, say, 4 or 5 years ago. The feed-in tariffs at the time were very attractive and very, very good feed-in tariffs. So now a lot of people are coming to the point where they're looking to renegotiate their contracts, renegotiate those feed-in tariffs, and it's coming as a bit of a shock because those feed-in tariffs are significantly lower than what they would have been. But that's not to say that it's panic stations and you need to worry. It also means that the energy that you're buying is a lot cheaper as well. So it just means that you just have to be a bit more creative in how you use your energy, both importing from the grid and also how you use that solar that you'd be generating on site.
Yeah, for sure. That's a really good point. I think people are definitely upset that they're not getting as much for their solar, but there are ways to soak up the cheap energy in the grid at that time as well. So you can sign a wholesale contract, you can sign up to a retail product that links you to the wholesale price in some way. So there's other options. It's not all doom and gloom, as Byron said. The last one's probably a bit technical for me, so I might refer to Sarah, but there's been some changes to how we settle prices in the grid. Isn't that right, Sarah?
Yeah, we've seen a transition recently from a 30-minute settlement to a 5-minute settlement. It means prices are settled over a 5-minute period. Instead, this change in the NEM is something that we've needed to support new technologies that are more responsive. We spoke before about a ramp-up rate, so the ability to generate quickly or, in fact, turn down and stop providing generation into the network when prices are really low. So that's something that really supports solar and storage and other new technologies.
Definitely. I think that's a good one you touched on as well, ramping down. That's something we're pretty focused on at Flow Power, known as demand response, where customers are kind of switching off for high prices. I guess not just switching on generation, they're actually avoiding it. So this next slide kind of talks to that correlation we're seeing between renewables and low pricing. So this is in New South Wales, where there's probably the lowest correlation. If you looked at this in South Australia and Queensland, you're going to see an even higher correlation between low prices and high solar generation or high wind generation. But here you can see New South Wales, again, the yellow and green being the wind and solar. When you've got high instances of this, you've kind of got your prices really dropping, always at kind of these low points down here. And then the second arrow next to those ones is when the fossil fuels come on to, I guess, cover those peak and shoulder periods when solar starts to die off. And at this point in time, prices escalate. So I guess what we're showing here is that renewables can be cheaper, and there are ways to support the renewable market while actually saving money as well. As we kind of said, we're still seeing in the media and things like that, the renewables can be more expensive and there's no way to kind of, I guess, save money while going renewable. But it's definitely not the case. Customers that can tie themselves to this spot price, whether it be through a wholesale mechanism or other contractual methods, you can definitely save money while supporting the transition to a more renewable grid as well. And on that specifically, this is kind of known as the duck curve. Byron's a man that likes ducks, so maybe you want to talk to this one, mate?
You're not wrong at all, Jacob. And for anybody who's seen any webinars or seen any information from Flow Power before, will also be pretty familiar with the duck curve. So what we're looking at is two different kinds of graphs on the slide here. So you've got your traditional fixed retail kind of pricing, indicated by that solid black straight line. But underneath that, what's actually happening is you've got a wholesale market as well. And that's indicated by that green teal colored line. So what we're seeing is what typical prices would look like over a 24-hour period. So as you would expect with your fixed rate, you've got an off-peak rate that's during the evening period, and then you've got a peak rate during the day. But what's actually happening is you've got some peaks and troughs throughout that 24-hour period through the wholesale market, through the wholesale pricing. And if you just sort of expand your imagination a little bit, that green teal line actually looks like a bit of a duck. which is why we call it a duck curve. So you got the tail end of the duck there, sort of towards the morning period, and then you got a bit of a higher, more peaky period later on in the afternoon. What's very interesting to see is they're during the middle of the day, so sort of around 12 p.m., starting around 10 a.m., running through to about 3, maybe even 4 p.m. You see there's quite a significant gap between traditional fixed peak rates and wholesale prices. You see a huge discrepancy between the two. So it means that if customers that are exposed to the wholesale market or accessing this wholesale market would actually be paying incredibly low energy prices, and sometimes it even dips into a negative price. So if I were to look at some of the prices as we're speaking right now, being 10:40 a.m., pretty much across the Australian market, except for Tasmania, I'm seeing some negative prices. So anybody who's using energy, or any retailer, or anybody who's drawing energy off the grid is actually getting paid to do that at the moment. So obviously you'd find anybody who's using that energy right now would be having quite significant savings at the end of the day on their invoices. And so that's what we're looking at that duck curve. And it's a lot easier, I guess, to shift some of your load from that late afternoon period to the middle of the day and save on your energy rates than it would be to, say, shift from the middle of the afternoon through to nighttime, as you would find on fixed rates. And as Jacob mentioned, shifting to the middle of the day, not only are you supporting solar and renewable generation, but you're also getting quite a good price for your energy. So it's a bit of a win-win situation.
Yeah, spot on, Byron. I think it's something we talk about a lot, and we, I guess, don't think is talked about enough elsewhere. But yeah, so many customers are still on these peak and off-peak rates, which kind of correlate with more around when people would use electricity rather than what's going on in the market. And by simply, choosing a contract that passes through this teal line instead of the black line, you're incentivizing yourself to use electricity when there's more renewables. So use it in the middle of the day when there's lots of solar, get a cheaper price, and support the transition to renewables. So it's something that we're really big on and been talking about for a long time, and other retailers are doing similar stuff. So if it's something that's of interest to you, if you do have a 9 to 5 kind of load profile, like you're an office or anything like that, it's definitely worth looking into options that pass this through rather than passing this black line through. Sarah, I mean, you're probably best to kind of talk about what it means to go renewables. So I'll pass over to you.
Yeah, certainly. In my role at Flow Power, I have the opportunity to see both sides of all the different aspects of what it means to go renewable, from negotiating contracts with large-scale renewable generation, such as wind and solar projects, even hydro, right through to the customer side, which is behind the meter solar, or a direct PPA with one of those larger projects, or just LGCs, or any combination of the above, to be honest. And we're obviously pretty aware that it's a complex landscape and can be a little bit daunting. And we often have customers saying, where do I start? And I think the best place to start is to work out what's important to you, prioritize what sort of a timeline as to how you want to see the steps, budgeting and that sort of thing. And obviously all of this can start with a business meeting with the decision makers in the business and working out you, and then reaching out to someone who can assist.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Sarah. And Byron, I guess specifically, how can you do it? How can you get renewable?
Yeah, well, I mean, as with pretty much anything in life, there's more than one solution to a problem, and everybody's position is unique, and every business's situation and goals would be unique. So there's more than one way to go about that. I guess one of the quickest, simplest, and easiest ones is through renewable energy certificates. So in the avoidance of those 3-letter acronyms Jacob mentioned, they're called large-scale renewable certificates. So these are the kind of certificates that you would buy, that you'd pay a little bit extra for and tack onto your energy price. And it's a good way for business to, I guess, bite size, look towards going, to step change to a renewable target. So you can buy those the certificates into equivalent load. So you can go 20, 40, 50, 75% equivalent load. And it opens up that avenue to make those kind of renewable claims. If you've got sort of the logistical and maybe a little bit more capital to spend, you can always install some rooftop solar. And we call that behind the meter solar because that's some solar panels that you would install on site, say on your roof, or maybe you've got a large parking space that you're not using anymore. And it's behind the meter because it's energy that you would generate and use on site. And it wouldn't have, you wouldn't be then drawing that energy from the grid. So you wouldn't be paying any of those, potentially high prices on the, on those peak periods that we mentioned earlier. And it would reduce the amount of energy that you would actually draw. And you're effectively using that sunlight and directly using some of that renewable energy. If you don't have the capital expense, maybe it's a bit of a logistical challenge, then you can always look at doing what we call a PPA, sorry, Jacob, power purchase agreement, where that's where you would buy energy offtake from an established wind or solar project. So that we're thinking those big solar farms, those big wind farms that are out in the country, you can actually buy some of the energy that they would offtake. So it's almost like having that solar farm, but without having that solar farm on your roof. And then one of the other ways is the carbon credits. It's something that a lot of people are talking about at the moment. It's a very common, very widely discussed avenue. You can certainly explore some carbon credits. They're not always technically linked to renewable energy. It's one of those things that it can be a bit of a nebulous sort of avenue. So Jacob, I think you're muted.
I certainly am. Thanks, Byron. And just to dive into that in a little bit more detail, before I do actually, I will just note if you do have questions throughout, there should be a little chat button in your the thing that appears on your screen. So just type them in there and we can answer those at the end of the session. We've got about 10 minutes reserved for that. But sorry, just to get back into it. So as Byron was saying, carbon credits, not technically renewable. They're probably the most common way that retailers will look to offset emissions. Basically what they do is they reduce, remove, or avoid greenhouse gases. So that could include planting trees. It could also include not burning wood chips for a day. So literally paying for a company not to do that. So there's a wide range of areas that the carbon credits come from. It's not necessarily supporting renewables. It's definitely not a bad thing. Like, I mean, it's definitely the first step in working towards, I guess, a greener grid. However, not necessarily supporting renewables. It's just offsetting the carbons you're using. And it can be used to offset, not just electricity consumption, but other areas of your business as well, whether it be waste or, other carbon intensive parts of your business. But yeah, I guess the next step after carbon credits would be renewable energy certificates. Byron, you might want to talk to those.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned earlier, the renewable energy certificates, you can kind of use that as a bit of a step change or bite-sized way of making your business go more renewable, because so these are the certificates that wind and solar projects would generate for every megawatt hour of energy that they themselves would generate. So you find it's a very quantifiable, very tangible, very traceable way of looking at your energy and renewable energy. So you've got your specific projects that would generate or create very specific certificates, and they would then sell and trade those certificates. So by buying LGCs, you're actually directly supporting a specific wind or solar project, and that might be something that's in your local government area, in the same state, maybe even the one next door to you. So it's a very tangible and very quantifiable way of supporting renewable projects. And as I said, you can do it in step changes. You can do 20% equivalent to your load, 50%, or even 100%. You might even want to go above and beyond. You can do 120%, for example, of your load if you really want to take an active role and involvement in supporting renewable projects. Another way you can do that is through the renewable energy PPAs, which Sarah would have a little bit more experience in.
Thank you, Byron. Yeah, the next step above just renewable energy certificates is contracting both energy and certificates directly from a project. You do this through essentially an allocation, so you get a portion of whatever that project generates. This provides great transparency, additionality, which we'll speak to shortly, but also that see, touch, feel of actually having a project. I know we've got a number of schools that plan excursions out to these projects so they can educate educate everyone further, the children, they can educate the children and students about energy and how it works and where it comes from, which is really exciting.
For sure. And Sarah, you're already on this page, so we've got another photo of Sarah doing some hard yakka in the top left there. So yeah, do you want to talk to what we did at Bowman?
Yes, certainly. This project is one that's really close to my heart. I was lucky enough to go out with Molycop, one of our largest off-takers now for this project, to go and see a bear paddock outside of Wagga Wagga initially, and over a number of months then see what was once a bear paddock become this wonderful solar farm that now powers 36,000 homes. And I guess what really stuck with me was, you know, there's often something like a community fund associated with these projects, and certainly with Bowman there's a $1 million fund together with Westpac over 10 years. But outside of that, you see, you know, the community really come alive and support the project. We had the mayor come down and support and speak about how proud he was, and you know, even down to the local pub owner who during construction had all these construction workers come and grab a meal at his pub and that sort of thing. So you really see the benefits outside of what's initially in front of you.
Yeah, great. I think great. Well said, Sarah. I think this is kind of really what we see as the gold standard, I guess, of supporting renewables. When you're actually purchasing a portion of electricity from a wind farm, from a solar farm. Lots of businesses try to do it for a local project somewhere in their backyard, and we can obviously facilitate that. Not always possible if you don't live in a sunny spot, for example, but you can always usually get one within the state that you can support and have a portion of. So yeah, a great way to, I guess, support the renewable transition again. And Byron, maybe do you want to talk to, I guess, what some of our customers have done in that space?
Yeah, well, exactly right. And I guess the good thing about this, or the good news about this, is you don't have to wait to go renewable. It's no longer the kind of pipe dream that businesses and councils were dreaming about 10, 15 years ago. It's something that we can actually do today. So for example, if you look at talking about large government council, we've got the city of Sydney, who are doing some great things in the renewable space. They've got a very comprehensive strategy to achieve their sustainability goals. So as you can imagine, as a council, they've got quite a large energy consumption across very many number of sites in New South Wales. So what they've done is actually engaged with the local community in a big way to take an active role in the development of the Shoalhaven solar project, and Flow Power is facilitating the offtake agreement with Sapphire Wind Farm and Bowman Solar Farm as well, and buying LGCs equivalent to their total energy consumption, which makes them 100% renewable. So they're making some really good steps in that space as well. So obviously the natural next question is, do you have to be a big council to be doing this sort of things? And absolutely not. So AW Edwards is a construction and manufacturing company, which, while still using quite a bit of energy, as you can imagine, maybe not quite as much as a large government council. They've got quite a few handful of sites around New South Wales, and they're after a simple, easy, all-in-one green price. Which is, with the city of Sydney, their offtake agreements typically span over a long period of time. For some customers, they might not have that appetite for the long-term agreements. So something like AW Edwards, something that's nice, simple, easy, short, but still has a very impactful and very significant, makes a big significant difference in the renewables energy space, and is making them an active driving force in changing the market to be fully renewable.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Byron. And look, we'll basically wrap it up there and do some questions. We've got a couple that have come through on the chat. But before we do, just I guess a couple of tips to get you started. If you are interested, grab your bill. Look at when you're using electricity. Is it mostly peak? Are you paying a high peak rate? That way you can kind of know if maybe you should be on a tariff that links you through to the wholesale market rather than just the peak and off peak. Speak to the business. Lots of businesses are starting to have, I guess, mandates regarding when they will go renewable or how renewable they will go. So it's really good to understand when, so that you know what's coming. And finally, you can always speak to us. So give us a call. You can, call myself, Byron, or Sarah, but we'll put up our inbound line at the end of this presentation as well. So just jumping to some questions. The first one is a question 2 parts. So I might swing the first part to you, Byron. At what usage in megawatt hours does it become cheaper for a customer to go on wholesale? And this customer specifically is using power between 2 AM and 5 PM.
Well, I guess anybody who's using energy can typically find good some good reduction in rates. Normally we'd be looking at commercial and industrial businesses. So a bit of a good rule of thumb is something around 100 megawatt hours as a good rule of thumb, or 150 megawatt hours per annum. But certainly that doesn't mean that you're exactly constrained to that kind of usage. I certainly would recommend getting in touch with somebody from FlowPower. The line and the email is there. Give us a call, and we can have a chat with you about what might best suit your particular needs. As I mentioned earlier, everybody's in a unique position and has different goals. So definitely something that we can do have a tailored discussion with you around.
Yeah, spot on. I guess it's not as simple as just saying wholesale or not wholesale. There's plenty of options in between, depending on when you're using electricity, what your appetite is, that kind of thing. And the second part of that question was, is now a good time to buy renewables? And I'm going to take that one because the next one that come through looks hard, so I'm going to give that to Sarah. But yeah, it definitely is a good time to buy renewables. We're seeing prices quite cheap for electricity, full stop. So even we're seeing customers moving on to a 100% renewable offer that's still a discount to what they were paying. So it's a great time to kind of get that through the business, keep your CFO happy and your sustainability team happy. I'm saving some money and I'm going renewables. So it's definitely a good time to do it. And as I said before, there are lots of those kind of mandates coming as well. So you can always just be a step ahead of the curve. So this next one for Sarah around batteries. So Sarah, solar panels are improving in cost effectiveness, but when will batteries get better? When will we see a better return on investment from batteries?
Sarah, I think you're
Sarah's on
muted.
mute. Yeah, okay.
Certainly. Well, I guess as we solar,
I think Sarah's turned into a robot, unfortunately, so I might have to have a go at answering that one. She's definitely our resident expert on the topic, but I guess we are seeing it come down in a similar fashion to what solar did a few years ago. The way moving to 5-minute settlement will support a lot of the large scale batteries are making a lot of money from other services, not just energy, but frequency control. So large scale seems to be quite cost effective at the moment, and they're getting a good return on investment. At the, I guess, commercial level for businesses, it seems like we're still a little while off, but as we said, with this, the more volatility in the grid and cheaper prices through the day that the battery can actually soak up, and solar tariffs not being as good, so you can use your solar to charge your battery. There are lots of different mechanisms coming, and I guess being more exaggerated so that we can get a better return on batteries. But yeah, still a little bit of work to do there. Byron, I might throw this one to you. How does the costing compare between using electricity from PPAs, LGCs, and then just the regular market?
Yeah, so there's obviously each one in and of itself will have some different pricing, and there's definitely a sense of it kind of depends. So I'll tackle the LGCs as a starting point, and the prices you would see for LGCs depend on the type of project, whether it's wind and solar, and the region, Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, that sort of thing. But it wouldn't be unreasonable to be looking at 2 to 3 cents per kilowatt hour for LGCs. That's sort of the ballpark costing that you would look at. And as mentioned earlier, that's a price that you would typically tack on top of your energy price. When we're looking at PPAs, same sort of situation as LGCs. The region project adds a lot of variability to the price, but you'd be looking at those, the ballpark figure you'd be for the PPAs, and some of the PPAs I've seen typically around 5, 6, 7 cents a kilowatt hour. Wouldn't be an unreasonable ballpark figure for those. And then when we're looking at the regular markets, as mentioned earlier, the price change is there every 5 minutes now, down from every 30 minutes. And certainly, middle of the day kind of prices would be very, very low, very depressed, sometimes even negative. So you'd be looking around, I would say on average, off the top of my head, probably around 2-3 cents during the middle of the day periods. And then when you're looking at those peakier periods, early in the morning, later on in the afternoon, I would say it wouldn't be unreasonable to maybe double those kind of prices. So you'd be looking around 4 or 5 cents in the afternoon on average as well. So you find that, as Jacob mentioned now, pricing generally is very, very low and lines up very well with renewable pricing as well, which is why, as we mentioned, it's a very good time to be looking at renewables at the moment.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Byron. And we'll just do one more before we finish up because we are, I think, technically over time. But I'll take the last one. It is a source of frustration for many customers, but this customer said, I already pay for environmental certificates on my bill. What does that mean? So those environmental rates that you pay, they're expressed as an LRET or an SRES. They're different depending on which state you're in. They are basically based on government set targets, and it's just a pass-through cost. So unfortunately, you can't claim any renewables for that as a business. However, yeah, it is helping Australia as a nation, I guess, reach our renewable targets that we've set over the next 10 years. So look, that's basically all we've got time for today. So we're 1 minute over, but we'll finish up now. So thanks, Byron, thanks, Sarah, and thanks everyone for joining us today as well. It's been good.
Thanks, Jacob. Thanks, Sarah. And thanks to everybody for joining us.
Great. Thanks, guys.